Chris Slattery, welcome to my show.
Thank you, John.
It's great. You have been in the pro-life movement for many years. You have had a storied history with it. You have a legacy. You're a significant presence in the pro-life movement, and nationally and in the New York area. You're known for the many years you've put into the pro-life movement. So congratulations. I mean, it's impossible almost to know where to begin, but I'd like to start with your present situation. I know you've been dealing, Chris, with some health issues, and despite all that, you're still active in pro-life work, your pro-life mission, and you're doing so much. Just tell us about that, bring us up to date.
Well, I've been fighting cancer for about 3 years now. Stage 4 colon and prostate cancer. So it does limit me a little bit. Treatments can be a little debilitating with chemotherapy, as those of you who have gone through that know, or you've had family members that have gone through it. But I'm a fighter and not giving up, and I work hard every day. I can't do as much physically as I used to, but I will be going down to the March for Life next week. I go almost every year since 1980.
Yeah.
This year, there are about 8 different pioneers in the pregnancy services and maternity home movement that are going to be honored, including yours truly, at a national prayer event on the morning of the march at Constitution Hall. If anyone is going to Washington and coming in early the morning of Friday the 20th, please come to Constitution Hall. No reservations required, and there will be a 7:30 a.m. mass, and then a Protestant prayer service at 8:30, and then the program will go till 10:30. The march rally starts at noon on the National Mall, and it's always usually held on a Friday closest to the 22nd, because this enables many to make a 3-day weekend conference. Conferences take place, and exhibits and dinners and educational seminars are held over 3 or 4 day period. So January 22nd is actually a Sunday this year. And of course, Congress is closed on the weekends. So there's no point in trying to march on closed congressional office buildings. So that's why the march has been moved generally to the Friday closest to the 22nd. It gets a little complicated inauguration week, when usually inauguration day is January 20th. So sometimes it gets thrown off 3 or 4 days.
So give us the date again, and this is the 50th anniversary.
Right.
The date
March
for the march,
Life,
if anybody's listening, when should they arrive in Washington?
yeah, I mean, some people come down on Wednesday or Thursday, and the Renaissance Hotel serves as the national headquarters for the March for Life exhibition hall and for seminars. The Renaissance Hotel is in the downtown DC area. So there's an all-day exhibit hall starting Thursday afternoon and all day Friday. And there's the annual, for Catholics, there's the annual Mass. I believe it starts at 5:30 p.m. at the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception near Catholic University. That's an annual event that draws 4,000 or 5,000 to possibly the largest Catholic church in America, and that's an annual event.
Okay, so the date, and day.
The Mass preceding the day of the march is on Thursday the 19th. The march is on Friday the 20th. And so
I think we're going to see, are you expecting, I mean, a lot of people are expecting a really record turnout this year, given the anniversary and also the overturning of Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs decision?
Well, it should be a good turnout. Whether it's a record, I don't know. One slight obstacle was that the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. canceled the annual youth mass that was held in the basketball hockey arena. Used to be called the Verizon Center. I'm not sure if that's the name of it now, but it's a shame that that was canceled. But that used to draw about 20,000 kids. So the schools would bus kids in. So I expect there'll be less kids coming because of that cancellation.
Wow.
But
That's
many
surprising.
colleges bring in buses. Notre Dame University in South Bend, Indiana, has brought in as many as 16 busloads of kids all the way from South Bend. And other schools in the area, Maryland, Virginia, and beyond, Pennsylvania, New York, have bussed in many thousands for years. The Archdiocese of New York usually arranges about 15 to 20 buses from the Archdiocese of New York. Brooklyn and Queens, not too many. Long Island does very well. And northern New Jersey and all across New Jersey, buses are going down. So it's impossible really to predict the numbers, but it's always at least 100,000 people.
Yeah.
Sometimes double that. The police department does not make official counts of the March for Life or any large gatherings. They've been burned in too many fights with organizers of many different events over the decades, and so they don't make any official counts. So everyone every
It's their
year
own
says,
estimate.
"Oh, throws around an extra 100,000 this
Yeah.
or that."
Yeah.
Frankly, I'm not obsessed with the numbers.
Yeah.
It's a big crowd.
Yeah, well, I mean, always the recurring theme is that there's this massive numbers, whatever way you cut it, 100,000, 200,000, some years maybe 400,000. One of the largest, or maybe the largest marches of the year in the nation, in DC, and yet it gets very scant media coverage on both sides.
Well, this year there probably will be more media coverage because of the Roe versus Wade overturn in June, that and the Dobbs decision, and which came out of the Dobbs decision, and the fact that abortion was in the new Congress. There were two abortion related pieces of legislation that were voted on this week. Abortion is important to the Republicans and the Democrats. They're pretty much in Congress. There's only one pro-life Democrat, and in the Republican Party, almost all the Republicans vote pro-life, and maybe a few abstain occasionally, but none vote against life.
Yeah.
So the two parties are, you could say, completely diametrically opposed. There were votes this week on an Infant Born Alive Act, which would require, I guess this law has been passed before, but they were perhaps tweaking it, adding penalties. It passed the House with one vote of one Democrat and I think 219 Republicans. So the vote was 220 for it. It passed, but it will not make progress in the U.S. Senate. There was also a resolution condemning the violence against pregnancy centers and churches, where there were literally over 100 attacks on pregnancy centers and churches this year.
In the
Firebombs.
past year. In the past
Yeah,
year.
well, I meant 22. And this was very gingerly handled by the FBI. The FBI has raided homes of people who have peacefully protested at abortion clinics with SWAT teams, guns drawn, bulletproof vests on, and yet They don't even have a single suspect in a single one of scores of acts of vandalism, firebombing of pregnancy centers. Not a single suspect named after about 6-7 months of attacks. There was a $25,000 reward offered 5 months after a firebombing of a Buffalo, New York abortion opponent organization, a pro-life pregnancy center. And this was too little too late. Pictures took 5 months from security cameras to be posted by the FBI, 5 months after the event. This shows you the low priority the FBI gives to investigating violence from groups that took responsibility, called Jane's Revenge. They probably have some names, but they claim they have no evidence. It's astounding how there's no evidence to name even a single suspect in scores and scores of attacks. Yet 1,000 people were arrested after January 6th 2 years ago, after a very vigorous effort to declare 1,000 people seditionists, when in fact not a single one was arrested for having carried a weapon or gun or a knife into the Capitol building. And they call that sedition. I don't know how you can have sedition without violence. The vandalism was modest compared with firebombing of pregnancy centers. No fires were set at the U.S. Capitol. There were some broken windows and some minor vandalism, but the fact is that the different treatment, double standards for the 2020 summer riots, where scores of police, if not hundreds of police, were injured by protesters, rioters, looters, vandals, anarchists, and yet most of these people were let off scot-free. Most of them weren't even charged. Vandals who attacked federal properties. Now,
well, let me stop you there, Chris. Any kind of wanton violence, you're right, there is a double standard at play. Any kind of wanton violence, and I mean, the January 6th was a lot of people have condemned that. It was, the way the conduct of a lot of the protesters was certainly not acceptable. So,
sure.
put me in that camp. But there is a double standard at play. And I'm curious to get your take on why we've seen, it appears that the DOJ has stepped up prosecution of pro-life vigil people like yourself and people who are trying to defend life. We've seen that last year was awful, and I guess the classic case was in Philadelphia, where we had the 40 Days for Life pro-lifer Mark Hoyk, I guess you pronounce his name, and his house was raided by the FBI. It was a terrible scene. What do you think what has motivated the DOJ to take such draconian and unacceptable actions?
Well, I think it's clearly the White House has directed the Department of Justice and the FBI to do their bidding and to ramp up prosecution of pro-lifers. They have actually charged people with crimes under the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act,
Right,
which
the
law,
acronym
which
FACE,
is
I guess.
based.
Yeah.
The underpinning of the law is based on a constitutional right to an abortion that no longer exists.
Yeah.
There's no constitutional right to an abortion. So you have a law being enforced by the feds for a right that's gone.
Have you
this
yourself
law has to be eviscerated because it's now meaningless. You had charges that racked up penalties up to 13 years in prison. The Department of Justice charged Chinese spies with crimes this year with penalties up to 11 years in prison. So to put yourself on the sidewalk in front of an abortion clinic or in the lobby of an abortion clinic is more of a heinous act than carrying out espionage against the United States.
Tell us
Hard
about
to
your
believe,
own
right?
Tell us about your own situation, Chris, and these stepped up actions by DOJ and law enforcement. Have you been at the receiving end
I've
of
been in
anything
touch
here?
with the FBI, and I've from the spring of 22, and I had a death threat called in. I had vandalism at one of our buildings in Brooklyn, New York, and nobody was hurt. No one carried through on the death threats, or I wouldn't be on the program.
Mm.
But the FBI actually turned it over to the police, and they actually got the name and number of the caller to me, and they just gave him a stiff verbal warning. Gee, isn't that nice?
Jeez.
How kind and considerate they are when it comes to the tolerance for death threats against pro-lifers. But
Mm.
I can guarantee you, if I had made a death threat against an abortionist, I'd be facing a decade in prison just for a phone call.
Yeah.
This is the kind of crap that has gone on for too long. It's a double standard, and I've been pregnancy centers are going to be the subject of horrific investigations, witch hunts this year in New York State. This is the only state in the country where a law was passed in the summer of 22 where the state obliged the Department of Health to investigate with subpoenas and visits, raids, who knows what's coming from the state Department of Health to every single pregnancy center in the state of New York. And there are probably 75 to 85 pregnancy centers from the tip of Staten Island to Buffalo to the Adirondack Mountains to Montauk, all across the state. So it's a intimidation factor. It's a waste of our time, waste of our resources. I've gone through this before. We saw subpoenas against pregnancy centers back in 2002 under then Eliot Spitzer, Attorney General, who became governor and was ousted from office in a prostitution sting. We saw the Attorney General Eric Schneiderman in 2013 issue new subpoenas against EMC. He was later outed in a super Me Too charges by various women, so he was outed as well. What
Yeah.
is it about these Democrat attorney generals and governors? Remember, Governor Cuomo was ousted in Me Too incidents in 2022. So we've seen vicious pro boards get their just desserts. Spitzer, Schneiderman, Cuomo. And so what can I say next?
So,
We'll
Chris,
see
just to
laws
be very
passed
clear,
as a result of this.
now just to be clear, so that all listeners are clear, when you say pregnancy centers, these are pro-life centers offering alternatives to women or
Pregnancy
couple. Yeah,
centers are alternative to abortion facilities,
yeah,
which offer pro-life consultations, life-affirming
yeah,
pregnancy tests, ultrasounds. In some cases, not all pregnancy centers offer ultrasounds. We
yeah,
do.
and doing
We're
great work and
we're
doing
nurse or
fantastic
doctor
work.
supervised in our offices, and some are not, and they just do pregnancy self tests for the women. They do their own tests in effect and consultations. But no matter the type of pregnancy center, we're all going to be turned upside down this year, 2023, in the state of New York. This is a state issue. The feds have the power to attack us with smear campaigns. We're now dealing with a breakthrough crisis that just developed last week, and that is every CVS and Walgreens in America is going to become an abortion clinic, in effect. CVS and Walgreens, under the authority of the FDA, are now going to be, and any pharmacist in the United States potentially will be able to dispense abortion pills. We are not talking about morning after pills or contraceptives. We're talking about abortion pills that can kill a developing baby between 5 and 10 weeks in the pregnancy. Women will be able to obtain these pills through every CVS and Walgreens in America soon. Absolutely mass distribution of abortion pills over the counter. There are issues with the states that have banned abortion. The feds and these states, the 13 states that have highly restricted abortion, and there will be federal lawsuits between these states and the federal government. But I can guarantee you, in every blue state in America, including New York, California, New Jersey, Connecticut, all the Northeast states, we will see every CVS and Walgreens soon dispensing abortion pills over the counter without a prescription. Without a prescription, without seeing a doctor, without medical screening. This is outrageous. This is going to make the job of the pro-life movement much, much harder. We have enough of a challenge trying to protest abortion at surgical abortion facilities. Can you imagine adding tens of thousands of pharmacies to the list of protest sites? Can't be done. There's going to have to be a strategic campaign of boycott against CVS and Walgreens and other smaller chains. We're not sure where Rite Aid is going to go, Duane Reade, and many other independent pharmacies. Each one will have to make their own decision. Chains will probably make a corporate decision like CVS and Walgreens. What I'm talking about is the chemical destruction of a child through medical means, which involves taking 2 sets of pills, one that dries up the uterus, makes it inhospitable, cuts off nourishment for the baby, and then the other that expels the baby. There is abortion pill reversal. Over 4,000 successful abortion pill reversals have been arranged through pregnancy centers and hotlines. So if you take just the first few pills within the first 24 hours or so, you can reverse the process with ingestion of new hormones, and you can prevent, and not all cases, but in many cases, you can save the baby if you change your mind. So if that happens, if anyone watches this program or wants to share this with anyone ever taking abortion pills, go to abortionpillreversal.com. abortionpillreversal.com.
This is the details you're giving me are really horrific, and they're really disturbing. I wanted to ask you, Chris, and you sort of led into it there, since Roe v. Wade repealed and the Dobbs decision, New York City, New York State seems to have maybe gotten worse in terms of abortion because it's become a sanctuary state. So an unintended consequence of repealing Roe v. Wade, perhaps?
Well, of course, it was a consequence. Nobody made the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't make decisions based on unintended consequences. It's the interpretation that Roe versus Wade was unconstitutional was based on the fact that the U.S. Constitution does not mention abortion. Therefore, laws on a topic that's not dealt with in the Constitution is up to the states to decide. It's that simple.
Yeah, because we're a federal system, so the states decide. But I guess my question is, how is the pro-life movement going to crack this? Because it always seems to me that if you can create a profound pro-life, pro-family culture in New York City and New York State, you can turn America around and create the kind of environment that's good for us all.
I don't see any hope of turning around the culture in New York State, I'm afraid. Our culture has gone down the tubes. We've legalized marijuana. We've legalized travelers from around the world to come and camp here and basically come and live in our hotels, 4-star hotels. And then the people come in and they don't like the food and they throw it out into the garbage. one hotel recorded that 1 ton of food was being thrown out, brand beautiful, good food, because they just didn't like it, out of a hotel in New York. Our culture here is pro-drugs, pro-crime, pro-prostitution, pro-gambling, pro-vice, pro-shoplifting, pro-hate crimes, anti-Jew, anti-white, anti-Asian. It's a culture of high taxes, of that's causing hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers to flee the state. The state has become a total hellhole, and it is a very difficult place to operate a business, to operate and live in. And I'm not leaving myself. I'm holding the Fort Apache, if you will, and I'm,
You're referring, you're referring to our beloved Bronx, Fort Apache.
yeah, we have
Well,
a
but there are lovely
pregnancy
places
center
in
in the
fairness,
South
Chris.
Bronx.
I've traveled the Bronx over the years. There are nice places in it.
Well, of course, I'm not saying that every single neighborhood is on fire, or that the city and the state is completely unlivable, but hundreds of thousands of people believe it was, and that's why they left. But there are many staying, and there are many coming in here. Then they come, and then they expect everything, and they're not getting even the food they want, so they
Yeah.
throw it out, trash hotel rooms.
So
And
you don't describe a very optimistic picture, but there are pockets of hope. There are a lot of groups like yours, Chris, EMC, Frontline Pregnancy Centers, Chris Bell, Christine Flaherty across the water in New Jersey, Sisters of Life. They go out into the field and they're magnets of love, is all I can describe it as.
sure, but we're pockets of love, and we're not changing the culture here. You
Mm.
have to admit the culture has been on the decline, especially in the last 2 years. Since the summer of 2020, shoplifting is rampant. Petty crimes are, I've already mentioned the negatives. Yes, there are oases of hope. Yes, there are opportunities to change individual hearts and minds around from abortion plans, or from, despair. And that's what we focus on, it in small numbers relatively. We have seen New York have the highest numbers of abortions over the last 50 years in America. The New York market, including northern New Jersey, does 1 out of 10 of America's abortions. That's probably going to go up to 1 out of 13 or 15.
It's awful. It's awful.
No, I should say we will end up looking at it percentage wise. We will probably be doing 13 to 15% of America's abortions, as more women are directed here with the lure of enticement of free travel, free accommodation, free abortion. And they might, and as far as I know, maybe even Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, is going to throw in dinner and a show. But the fact is, when you're offering people to come here to commit sin, to commit the crime of abortion with no penalties, and thwarting any efforts to block any investigations by states that were pro-life, that prohibit travel out of state for an abortion.
Well,
This state is just
let me say this, Chris. Aside from people like you who's doing stellar work, God bless you, and you richly deserve the award at the March for Life, by the way. Doesn't it get to the heart of it in some ways that we leadership at the top in some of our institutions? We need strong leaders in City Hall. We need one strong leader there. We need a strong leader at the head of the church or churches, and in our various institutions. It only takes a handful, but they're wanting. Where are they?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily political or church leaders. What we need are saints, people that are living a great example in love and charity, and compassion and care, like Mother Teresa. We need more Mother Teresas, more um, holy men and women who are carrying out great apostolate and great and living in great sanctity. And we don't have to be the mayor, the Archbishop of New York, uh, this or that congressman or woman.
Mm.
Um, you know,
So in
let's
other
put it.
words, what you're saying, a great point. They can set that whole tone, and people can see through something, see if something is authentic or phony, and they're drawn to that. They were drawn to Mother Teresa and Sisters of Life.
Sure.
They're drawn to your kind of an organization, Chris Bell. They know this is genuine.
Yeah, but we need hundreds of thousands of saints, not just a handfuls, because we can't convert the culture through politics.
Mm.
Politics is downstream from culture. I didn't coin that phrase. Somebody else did. I think it was Breitbart. The fact is that our culture is on the massive decline.
Mm.
And it is partly because of corruption in our political elite class, our absolute abhorrent way that COVID was handled, the stripping of our religious freedoms, where liquor stores and lotto centers were open for business and churches were shut down. And in many cases, our bishops just were silent about it and didn't fight back hard enough. So we lost a lot of Catholics who no longer go to church. They don't think it's important anymore. They went and watched online for a year or two, and then they just realized, the heck with it. And that's a sad state of affairs because they lost the sense of the greatness of the sacred sacraments, which they have to receive in person. You can't get remote confession. You can't get remote communion. You have to receive it face to face on the tongue. And in the fact is that we have a crisis in the church as well because of the lack of confidence following the sex abuse scandals, the closings of so many of our parishes and schools, which is not just the fault, of course, the leadership, but it's the fault of our laity who are losing their faith. We've got to get our faith back because we can't put our faith in our institutions. We have to put our faith back in Jesus Christ and God and our this is who came to redeem us. Church institutions play a part in that redemption, but often they're imperfect, and we have to pray harder and become holier despite the faults of our institutions and our leaders. And we can't blame everything on somebody else. We can change the culture, but it's very difficult to do at some tipping points. New York, I think, has reached the tipping point of very difficult to return to the sanity of the past. We had a chance when we could have elected a sane governor,
Mm.
but we went for the insane governor in November. We did get some um, actual surprising, hopeful results from congressional districts, which chose conservative Republicans over liberal Democrats, including the Mike Lawler, who took over for Mahoney, who had been the Democrat congressional caucus chair. So that was a big surprise. The
Yeah.
numbers of New York congressmen that went Republican was a shock.
Let me stop you there, though, Chris.
Partly that was.
Yeah, let me stop you
Pardon?
there. That was, I suppose, a victory for the pro-life movement, but not all Republicans in New York are pro-life compared with the rest of the
No,
nation.
that's true across the country. Not in certainly not, but on a national level. To repeat what I said earlier, we just saw a vote
Yeah.
on the partial birth abortion ban, which is when a baby is born alive after an abortion. And the law was to require full medical treatment to try and revive the baby, or at least keep it comfortable, instead of throwing a living, breathing baby human being into a garbage can.
Yeah.
Only one Democrat in the entire House of Representatives voted for that law.
Yeah, let's come back to New York real quickly here, Chris, because I'm curious to get your interpretation on all of this. We've been told, and it seems clear, that New York's laws support, in effect, infanticide.
Absolutely. New York has got one of the worst statewide laws. Where in this coming New York State legislature, they're going to have to vote again to make, because to get a constitutional amendment in the state of New York, you have to pass a law in 2 consecutive legislatures, which of course are not the same. They're different every year. And then you have to have a referendum of all New Yorkers on the constitutional amendment. So we're going to see a constitutional amendment battle, which we're going to lose in the legislature for sure, because the Republicans are outnumbered in the Assembly and the Senate by veto-proof majorities. And we're going to see the people of New York vote on a constitutional right to an abortion. I'm not optimistic.
Yeah, well,
the New York State Right to Life Office, the so-called lobbying arm of the pro-life movement in New York State, has a grand total of 1 person in an office. 1 person.
1 person
New York
lobbying.
State Right to Life.
So
you
it
think
needs,
we're gonna?
It needs more support.
We're going to win a resolution on pro-life with the pitiful political lobbying effort that we have set up in Albany, New York? Never. So we already have laws on the book that basically legalize abortion till birth. We know of abortion clinics in Manhattan that do abortions up through 28 weeks. But they're a little skittish of doing them later because there are high medical risks. And this is a very litigious state. So if someone dies during a very late-term abortion, these abortion clinics are worried the hungry lawyers are going to come after them. New York City is training doctors in its New York City hospitals, Health and Hospitals Corporation, to do 3rd trimester abortions. They are trying to perfect it and get it done to the point where they could safely do abortions till birth. But they haven't been doing them yet, except in severe, what they say are medical emergencies. But elective 3rd trimester abortions are only being done that we know of through 28 weeks at this stage. But that's late enough. I mean, babies have been born and lived and survived from 20 weeks. 2 months earlier than 28 weeks. 20 weeks. Now, it's not common, but 23, 24-week babies can be saved routinely if prematurely delivered, because let's say there's some sort of a medical crisis and they need to do a cesarean section. They can, in preemie wards, save those babies. And then, but yet they're being electively destroyed at one big abortion clinic called Park Med in Manhattan on 2nd Avenue between 42nd and 43rd Street. They're doing late-term abortions till 28 weeks as we speak. We have the most abortion clinics of any city, major city in America. We have the highest rate of abortion. 1 out of 3 pregnancies end in abortion in New York City. We have the most training going on of any city in new abortionists. We have more hospitals doing abortions than in any other city. And now we probably have one of the highest number, if the highest number, of CVSs and Walgreens of any major city. So all of them combined are going to become new killing centers. So you have probably 60 to 70 hospitals and clinics doing abortions. And now we're going to have thousands of CVS's and Walgreens offering over-the-counter abortion pills. So sorry if I'm not as optimistic or hopeful on the short-term basis as you might like. That doesn't mean I give up. I fight harder and smarter, but we're on the defense. We are not on the offense. Yeah, if you live in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and you've outlawed abortion and you're celebrating up and down, but great. They're shipping women from your states to New York for free. They're giving them room and board and free abortions. Does that make me happy? No, heck no.
Yeah. So in her State of the State address, Governor Hochul just announced that as other states wage war on abortion access, my message to New Yorkers is clear. Not here, not now, not ever. And she has spoken about solidifying New York as a safe harbor, just to exactly everything you've been just talking about just now.
Yeah, it's just terrific. I'm not at all surprised by Kathy Hochul, who is a Roman Catholic, by the way, and receives communion. And where are the bishops about her excommunication or her
I mean, it's
suspension
terrible.
from receiving communion? Where are they? This is a woman like Nancy Pelosi and Joseph Biden who proclaimed that they're perfect, devout, holy believers, and they are out to kill as many children as possible. This is upside down. This is one of the reasons why the churches are emptying, because of the hypocrisy that our Democrat leading bishops are letting these fake, phony, fraud Catholics get away with pretending to be Catholics, when a great Catholic priest, now laicized, Frank Pavone, was stripped of his priesthood because of bogus charges of disobedience and blasphemy, which were ridiculous. He was obedient to his bishops. He asked the Vatican for placement under a bishop that would allow him to do his work full time. The Bishop of Amarillo, Texas, refused to release him over the last 11 years, and he was left in limbo. Wasn't even given an assignment to disobey that he wouldn't take.
Well, you've met Frank Pavone, Chris, and you've worked with him, right? How do you
I've worked with him very closely over 30 years.
How do you think this? Where will this finally end? Will I know? Frank Pavone has said he lobbied to be reinstated, if that's the correct word, as a priest. Is that ever going to happen?
If he'll do that or not, he may just wait for the next pope for an opportunity to appeal Pope Francis's decision to laicize him. He may not go the route of appeal to the Vatican now, but he's Mr. Frank Pavone, still running Priests for Life. Priests for Life is not a Catholic organization per se, although they're primarily dedicated towards reaching Catholics, priests, deacons, laity, catechists, but they work also very closely with many Protestant leaders. And I'm going to be at this ecumenical interfaith prayer service, as I said, this coming Friday, January 20th, where pro-life pioneers are going to be honored at the Constitution Hall at 8:30 p.m. a.m. on Friday, January 20th.
We're nearly out of time, Chris. We're nearly out of time. I want to get a few things in, important things about EMC FrontLine Pregnancy Centers. You're still operational. You're still up and running. You're still active. Tell us a little bit about it. How can anybody who needs to reach you, what's the best way for them to do it?
Well, we've just EMC FrontLine, EMC stands for Expectant Mother Care. EMCfrontline.org is our website. We have a new way to give there now. If you don't want to make a monthly pledge or an annual quarterly gift, you could make a pledge, and listen to this. Suppose you wanted to give up to $3,000, but you wanted to put down just a portion of that now. We have a new giving processor that will allow you to make a pledge, pay it off over 4 months, and they will donate to us the full amount of your pledge up front with no fees, no background checks, no credit checks on the donor. They will upfront the full pledge while you take 4 months to pay it off. It's called Give Now, Pay Later. So if you go to our website, that's another way to give now and pay later, or you can just make a one-time gift, again, at emcfrontline.org, or a monthly gift, or a quarterly gift. And, you know, there are other ways to give. You can donate property, cars. Don't donate your kids. We won't take them.
The wit of the Irish, I call that. So you have centers in the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens. So if a mom with a crisis pregnancy or a couple, they can just pick up the phone and reach out to any of your staff.
Grab a pen, and I'll give you the number to call. Call it from 7 in the morning till 11 p.m. In New York City, and you will get support and help if you're pregnant or you know someone else that needs support and help in New York City. I also can get you support and help anywhere in the country if you're out of state or in the suburbs of New York. But the phone number to call is 718-401-9400. 718-401-9400. And we'll get you help, get you medical care, get you prenatal care, get you an ultrasound, verify that the pregnancy you have is viable, rule out miscarriage or ectopic pregnancy. You'll be seen by a physician or a nurse in our offices in Brooklyn, the Bronx, or Queens. And we can also find you help in the suburbs or in any state in the U.S. if you need. Not necessarily affiliated with us officially, but we are networked.
And there's any costs involved for people who call up?
Well, if you don't have health insurance, we do charge a nominal fee for an ultrasound of $20.
Okay.
But no fees for helping you get free insurance, for getting supplies, diapers, gifts, whatever you need. There's no cost for those items. The ultrasounds are expensive, and we've added a $20 fee if you don't have insurance. Have insurance, no fee at all, no copays.
I want to wrap it up with maybe getting your kind of philosophy, your outlook, the meaning of life to Chris Slattery when you look back at your legacy and you look forward as you continue to do your work.
The only thing that matters.
Sum it up to me.
Yeah, the only thing that matters is that I become a saint and get to heaven and bring as many people as possible with me. That's it. Nothing else matters. I can't be a saint if I'm mean, cruel, uncharitable, unkind, full of vice, contempt. I could have contempt for the evils of the world, but my obligation is to try to transform that world, transform it through my work, through my time, effort, energy, and prayer. And I think all of us, as believers in God, whether we're Christians, Jews, Muslims, whatever, Buddhists, Tibetans, whatever, you must put your faith into practice and not focus exclusively around yourself or your family. You must look to the community to serve that community, to give back. We wouldn't have an abortion culture, a violent culture, if we loved more, cared more for our neighbors, and didn't promote all these vices legally: gambling, prostitution, drug use, killing babies, shoplifting consequence-free, crossing into our country without consequences, you name it. I'm for supporting immigrants. I'm for helping everyone who's come here legally or illegally, doesn't matter to me how they came in. But of course, we must serve everyone with charity and love, even if we disagree with political policies that make our lives more difficult. Don't give up on New York, New Yorkers. You may be sorely tempted to head to Florida or down south. Some of us have to hang in here and save the sinking ship.
Chris Slattery, thank you.
Thank you, John.